It started like any other evening. Elena was in the kitchen, humming a tune while making her favorite herbal tea. I sat at the dining table, flipping through some architectural designs for a project I was considering taking on. It was routine. Calm, comforting, familiar. But what she said next shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. "Adam, I need to talk to you." There was a tone in her voice I hadn't heard in years, not since her mother passed. I looked up, my curiosity piqued but not yet alarmed. "Sure," I said, setting the papers aside. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter. "I've been thinking about us, about our marriage." My stomach tightened. "Okay," I said slowly, keeping my voice neutral. "What about it?" She walked over, her eyes avoiding mine. "I feel like we've fallen into a routine. Things are predictable, stagnant." "Stagnant?" I repeated, trying to keep the edge out of my tone. "Elena, what are you talking about?" She finally looked at me, and the vulnerability in her eyes struck me like a blow. "I want to explore something different, Adam. Something new." The words hung in the air like smoke, choking me. "Something different?" I said, my voice hardening. "What does that mean?" Her gaze dropped again. I think I want to open our marriage." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table, the wood grounding me as I struggled to process what she had just said. "You think you want to open our marriage?" I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "Elena, are you hearing yourself?" "I know how it sounds," she said quickly. "But it's not about you. It's not about us. It's about me. I feel like I'm missing something in my life, and I need to find it." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "And you think the way to find it is by being with other men?" "It's not just that," she said, her voice trembling. "It's about rediscovering who I am outside of this marriage." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 25 years, 2 daughters, a lifetime of building a life together. And now this? "Elena, we've had rough patches before, but we've worked through them. Why didn't you talk to me about this sooner?" She sighed, a sound that was equal parts frustration and guilt. "Because I didn't know how to. And honestly, I was afraid of how you'd react." "Well, you were right to be afraid," I snapped, rising from the table. "Because this is insanity, Elena. Do you have any idea what you're asking me to accept?" "I'm not asking you to accept it," she said, her voice firming. "I'm telling you what I need." Her words cut deeper than anything she'd said before. This wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a question. It was a declaration, and it wasn't about us. It was about her. I shook my head, trying to steady myself. "I can't do this," I said finally. "If this is what you want, then I'm not the man for you." "Adam, don't say that," she pleaded, stepping closer. "I love you. I don't want to lose you. I need more." "More?" I laughed bitterly. "What more could you possibly need?" She didn't answer, and the silence was deafening. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own home. I didn't sleep that night. Her words replayed in my mind like a broken record. By morning, I'd made my decision. I packed a bag, told her I needed space, and drove to our lakeside property. I didn't say goodbye to Chloe or Rachel. I didn't trust myself to explain without breaking down. I didn't plan to stay in Mexico. It was supposed to be a temporary escape, a place to clear my head and figure out what came next. But as soon as I arrived at the lakeside community of San Lago, I felt a strange pull, as though the place was calling to me. The air was warm. The lake stretched out like a mirror beneath the sun, and the rhythm of life was slower, so different from the chaos I'd left behind. At first, I did nothing but exist. I spent hours staring at the water, my thoughts circling the same unanswerable questions. How had my marriage fallen apart so quickly? Why had Elena decided I wasn't enough? Was I the one who had failed her, or had she failed me? I tortured myself with these thoughts until I realized I wasn't finding answers. I was just digging the hole deeper. That was when I made the first real decision for myself in months, to let go of the questions. I didn't know if I could heal, but I could start by simply living. I bought a modest property, a small house with peeling paint and a ramshackle dock, and threw myself into fixing it up. The physical work was a relief, something tangible I could control. I rebuilt the dock, painted the house, and even started crafting furniture in a small woodworking shop I set up in the garage. Each project felt like a tiny step forward, a way to reclaim the parts of myself I'd lost. The locals were kind, but they gave me space, sensing that I wasn't ready to let people in. The exception was Luis, the elderly owner of a bait shop by the lake. He took an immediate liking to me and often stopped by to check on my progress. Luis had a way of speaking that felt like wisdom wrapped in humor, and his stories about life in San Lago gradually drew me out of my shell. He told me about the festivals, the music, the food, and the people who had made this community their home. For the first time in months, I started to feel a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time: curiosity. One evening, Luis convinced me to join him for dinner at a small, family-run restaurant in town. It was there that I met Sophia. She was unlike anyone I'd ever known. Poised, confident, with an air of quiet strength that drew people to her without her even trying. Her thick, dark hair was streaked with gray, and her eyes, a deep shade of amber, seemed to see right through me. She owned a pharmaceutical company, she told me, supplying medications to hospitals and clinics across the region. But she spoke of it casually, as though it were just one part of her life rather than the defining feature. We talked for hours that night, long after Luis had wandered off to play cards with some friends. I told her about my daughters, about my career, and even, cautiously, about Elena. Sophia listened without judgment, her gaze steady and calm. When I asked about her life, she smiled sadly and told me about her late husband, who had died in a factory explosion years ago. "He was my world," she said softly. "But life goes on. You learn to carry the weight." It wasn't just her words that struck me. It was the way she said them, as though she truly understood what it meant to lose everything and still find a way to keep going. By the time I left the restaurant, I felt something I hadn't expected: hope. Sophia and I began seeing each other regularly, though it started innocently enough. She invited me to join her for a local festival, where the streets were alive with music, dancing, and food. It was impossible not to get caught up in the energy of the place, and for the first time in years, I let myself enjoy the moment. Sophia laughed as I stumbled through a traditional dance, her hand warm in mine, and I realized how much I'd missed the simple joy of being with someone. Her daughter, Maya, was just as remarkable. At 14, she was a whirlwind of energy and charm, with a quick wit that reminded me of Chloe at that age. Maya took to me immediately, calling me "Senor Fix-It," after seeing the work I'd done on my house. She loved hearing stories about my woodworking projects and even convinced me to help her build a treehouse in Sophia's backyard. Her laughter was infectious, and spending time with her felt like rediscovering a part of myself I thought I'd lost. But as my bond with Sophia and Maya grew, so did the shadows of the past. Elena began calling more frequently, her messages alternating between regret and defensiveness. "I miss you," she said in one voicemail. "I made a mistake, Adam. Can we fix this?" I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to tell her exactly how much damage she'd done, to throw her words back at her and make her feel the weight of her choices. But another part of me just felt tired. I didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't want to keep looking backward when, for the first time in a long time, I was starting to see a future. Sophia sensed my turmoil, though she never pried. Instead, she offered quiet support, reminding me in her own subtle way that healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about choosing to move forward despite it. One evening, as we watched the sunset over the lake, she turned to me and said, "You don't have to decide everything at once, Adam. Just take the next step." I didn't know what the next step was, but I knew I wanted Sophia to be part of it. And for the first time in months, that was enough. Sophia and Maya became fixtures in my life in a way I never anticipated. What began as casual dinners and shared laughter turned into something deeper, something I hadn't dared to dream of after Elena's betrayal. Sophia was unlike anyone I'd ever met. Calm but passionate, strong yet warm. She brought out a side of me I thought I'd lost somewhere between the heartbreak and the self-doubt. With her, life didn't feel like something to endure. It felt like something to embrace. Maya, too, brought light into my days. Her wit and energy reminded me of Chloe when she was younger. She had this ability to pull me into her world, whether it was brainstorming treehouse designs or teasing me about my less-than-stellar Spanish. Spending time with her felt natural, as though I'd known her forever. One afternoon, after finishing the treehouse, she turned to me with a mischievous grin. "You know, Senor Fix-It, I think you'd make a pretty good dad." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I thought of Chloe and Rachel, of all the ways I felt I'd failed them during the fallout with Elena. Was it possible to be the father Maya needed without shortchanging my own daughters? I didn't have an answer, but Maya's trust in me gave me hope that I could try. Sophia and I were becoming something more than just friends, though neither of us said it aloud. There were late-night conversations by the lake, her hand brushing mine as we talked. There were moments of silence, not awkward but comfortable, as though we didn't need words to understand each other. I wanted to tell her how I felt, but the scars Elena had left behind held me back. Could I trust myself to love again? Could I trust her not to leave as Elena had? My doubts only grew when Elena showed up at the lake house. It was Christmas, and I'd been planning a quiet holiday with Chloe and Rachel. Instead, I opened the door to find Elena standing there, her expression a mix of desperation and regret. "I needed to see you," she said before I could speak. "And the girls." Her presence threw everything into chaos. Chloe refused to even be in the same room as her, while Rachel tried to play peacemaker. Sophia, ever the diplomat, encouraged me to give Elena a chance to explain herself, but I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. Over dinner, Elena finally broke down. "I made a mistake, Adam," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I needed something different, but all I've done is ruin the life we built together. I miss you. I miss us." Her words stirred something in me, not love, not forgiveness, but a deep sadness. This was the woman I'd built a life with, the mother of my children, and now she was a shadow of herself. But that didn't change what she had done, or the way it had fractured our family. "I'm sorry, Elena," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I don't know what you thought would happen, but I can't go back. I've started to move on." "With her?" she asked, her gaze flicking toward Sophia. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "With her." Elena's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out. Instead, she nodded, her shoulders slumping as though a weight had settled on them. I needed to try. As painful as it was, her visit brought a sense of closure I didn't realize I needed. When she left, I turned to Sophia, who had been quietly watching from the edge of the room. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" she asked, her eyes soft. "For being here. For understanding." She smiled, a small, sad smile. "Adam, I know what it's like to lose someone you thought you'd spend your life with. I also know what it's like to find someone new. Take your time, but don't let fear hold you back." Her words stayed with me in the days that followed. I realized I didn't want to let fear hold me back, not from Sophia, not from the life I could have with her and Maya. So one evening, as we sat by the lake watching the stars, I took her hand. "Sophia, I don't know if I'll ever be able to give you everything you deserve," I said, my voice low. But I'd like to try. She turned to me, her eyes shining. That's all I could ever ask for. From that moment, things changed. We stopped tiptoeing around our feelings and let ourselves be honest, be vulnerable. Sophia introduced me to her world, to the community she had built, while I shared more of my past, my struggles, my hopes. Maya, ever the little whirlwind, decided I was officially part of their family, and there was no arguing with her. But even as things with Sophia and Maya grew brighter, Elena's shadow lingered. Chloe refused to forgive her, while Rachel tried to mend fences but found herself caught in the middle. Sophia, always wise, encouraged me to let the girls navigate their own relationships with their mother. You can't fix this for them, Adam, she said. All you can do is be there for them. She was right, of course. She always was. As I stood on the edge of the lake one evening, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson, I realized how far I'd come. The pain Elena had caused was still there, but it no longer defined me. I had found something new, something worth fighting for, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The night I decided to propose to Sophia was one of the most nerve-wracking of my life. It wasn't just the act itself. It was what it symbolized. Choosing Sophia meant finally letting go of the last shreds of what I'd once had with Elena. It meant committing fully to a future I hadn't imagined when I first arrived in San Lago. It meant trusting myself to love again. I spent hours pacing my house, rehearsing what I would say, but the words felt inadequate. How could I express what Sophia and Maya had come to mean to me? How could I explain that they had brought me back to life? In the end, I decided to speak from the heart and hope it was enough. The next morning, I drove to a local jeweler, one Luis had recommended. The shop was small, tucked away on a quiet street, but the selection of stones was breathtaking. One in particular caught my eye, a fiery opal with shades of orange and red that seemed to burn from within. This one, I said to the jeweler, it's perfect. Maya helped me finalize the design, her enthusiasm contagious. Mom's gonna love it, she said, her dark eyes sparkling. And if she says no, I'll make her say yes. I laughed, grateful for her unwavering support. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Sophia and I had been spending more time together, blending our lives in subtle but meaningful ways. She often joined me on the lake for fishing trips, her laugh echoing over the water as she teased me about my less than impressive catches. In turn, I accompanied her to community events, watching as she navigated the room with grace and charm. Despite our growing closeness, there were moments of hesitation, on both sides. Sophia, ever strong, carried a secret weight I couldn't ignore. One evening, as we sat by the fire in her living room, she finally shared it. There's something you need to know, she began, her voice steady but low. When my husband died, it wasn't just a tragedy. It was a scandal. He worked for a petrochemical company, and there were allegations of corruption tied to his death. I stared at her, stunned. What kind of corruption? She looked away, her fingers tracing the edge of her glass. Bribery, environmental violations. I've spent years trying to clear his name, but the truth is, I'm not sure if he was innocent. Her vulnerability in that moment was palpable. For a brief second, I felt the old instincts kicking in, the desire to retreat, to protect myself from potential pain. But as I looked at her, I realized I didn't care about her past. What mattered was the woman in front of me, the woman who had stood by me as I rebuilt my life. Sophia, I said, reaching for her hand. Your past doesn't change the way I feel about you. If you're still carrying this, then let me help you. We'll face it together. Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded, her fingers tightening around mine. Thank you, she whispered. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. The night of the proposal arrived, and I felt like a teenager on his first date. I'd chosen the gazebo by the river, one of Sophia's favorite spots. Maya had helped me decorate it with string lights and candles, creating a soft, romantic glow. When Sophia arrived, her expression turned from curiosity to wonder. Adam," she said, stepping into the gazebo. "This is beautiful. What's the occasion?" I took a deep breath and reached for the ring box. "You." Her eyes widened as I knelt down, holding the box open to reveal the fiery opal. "Sophia," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "You've brought light back into my life when I thought it was gone forever. You and Maya have given me a family again, and I can't imagine my life without you. I love you, Sophia. Will you marry me?" For a moment, she said nothing, her hands covering her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks. Then she knelt in front of me, wrapping her arms around my neck. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times, yes. The days that followed were a whirlwind of joy and planning. Maya was ecstatic, immediately calling Chloe and Rachel to share the news. To my surprise, both my daughters were genuinely happy for me. Chloe, who had been wary of Sophia at first, admitted that she'd come to admire her strength and kindness. Rachel, ever the mediator, said she couldn't wait to see our family come together. But Elena's shadow still loomed. When she learned of the engagement, she called me in tears. "Adam, don't do this," she begged. "We can still fix things. We're supposed to grow old together." Her words might have broken me once, but now they felt hollow. "Elena," I said gently, "you had your chance. I've found something new, something real. I wish you the best, but I've moved on." She didn't argue, but the sadness in her voice lingered long after the call ended. I knew she was hurting, but I couldn't let her pain dictate my choices. Sophia and Maya were my future, and I wasn't going to jeopardize that for the sake of old wounds. The weeks leading up to the wedding felt surreal. For years, I had convinced myself that love, real, lasting love, was no longer possible for me. And yet, here I was, preparing to marry Sophia, a woman who had not only mended my broken heart, but had also brought light and joy back into my life. Planning the wedding was both chaotic and exhilarating. Maya was at the center of everything, ensuring every detail was perfect. She treated it as much her celebration as ours, and honestly, I loved that. Her excitement reminded me of how much she had come to mean to me, not just as Sophia's daughter, but as part of my family. Chloe and Rachel, too, embraced the occasion with surprising enthusiasm. Chloe, ever the skeptic, had grown close to Sophia over time, respecting her calm wisdom and undeniable strength. Rachel, always the peacemaker, said the wedding felt like a fresh start for all of us. Their support meant everything to me. 2 days before the wedding, the past came knocking, literally. I was out by the lake, testing the sound system for the ceremony, when I heard a car pull up. Turning, I froze. Elena stepped out, her expression hesitant and her eyes filled with emotions I couldn't quite read. "Adam," she said softly, walking toward me. "Can we talk?" Part of me wanted to send her away, to protect the peace I had worked so hard to build. But another part, the part that remembered the life we had once shared, knew this conversation was inevitable. I nodded, gesturing toward a bench by the water. She sat down, clasping her hands in her lap. "I heard about the wedding," she began. "I thought I could handle it, but I don't think I can let you go without saying what I need to say." "Elena," I said carefully, "I've moved on. You know that." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "And I'm not here to beg. I need you to know how sorry I am for everything. I was selfish, Adam. I thought I was missing something in my life, but what I didn't realize was that I already had everything I needed." Her words stirred a pang of sadness in me, not for her, but for what we had lost. "Elena," I said, my tone gentle but firm, "I don't think I can ever forget what happened. You hurt me in ways I didn't even know I could be hurt. But I do forgive you." Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't deserve your kindness, but thank you." We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the soft lapping of the lake against the shore. Eventually, she stood. "I won't bother you again," she said. "I just needed to tell you that. I hope you're happy, Adam. Truly." As she walked away, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Her visit, while unexpected, brought closure to a chapter of my life I was finally ready to leave behind.